Hi everyone, my name is Christa. I am Practical Astros on the internet. I am here with Shawna. Hi Shawna.
Hi.
Shawna is SmartAsstro, and we are two of the members of the Asteri Sofia Kairos collective, and we are here to talk about the astrology for the week, Wednesday to Wednesday from February 25th through March 3rd. Mercury is currently in Pisces, and when I was putting the slide together, I had 1 week as February 25th and I didn't notice it till right before we were about to record. It's like, oh yeah, time is very relative while Mercury's in Pisces. Speaking of Mercury is the first transit we're going to be talking about. Mercury is going to go retrograde on the 26th. And then we're going to talk about Mars square Uranus and the lunar eclipse in Virgo. When I was building these slides, I found these Emile Antoine Bayard's illustrations for Around the Moon by Jules Verne. And so I've been putting an image with the chart that it reminded me of. So enjoy. I think these are really beautiful little wood block prints. So the first one we're going to talk about is Mercury retrograde. Shawna, what are your hot takes with just Mercury retrograde in general?
Well, Mercury goes RX, what, like 3 times a year, right? I'll keep it PG. My usual is referring to a reverse cowgirl. But anyway, um uh so when we talk about Mercury retrograde, we're talking about all those words, right? We're going to revisit, return, relive, rethink, all of those words. Yeah, that really just embodies that Mercury retrograde. But it gives you a chance to go back and ensure that you've done things the right way or allow you to choose a new path,
Yeah.
you know? Mhm.
Yeah, this
Uh,
image here, it shows a person kind of looking very closely at something. It's a little navel gazy, when Mercury's in Pisces anyway, and when it's retrograde, it's like extra navel gazily,
yeah,
if that's a word, navel gazily.
it is now. Yeah.
It is now. You're welcome.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when Mercury's in Pisces, we might get more like emotional about some things too because it's a water
Mhm.
sign. Mercury is already speaks in symbols and already speaks in dreams and music, and it's just amped up and ramped up when it's in Pisces. And so the fact that we get to kind of continue doing that for a little bit longer gives us the chance to maybe, you do a lot of lucid dreaming. I think that's a really
Mhm.
cool thing. You can actually like choose your own adventure, and I think with Mercury retrograde, particularly in Pisces, you get that opportunity to choose your own adventure,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, there can be a little frustration when Mercury's in Pisces
Mhm.
because Mercury likes to dissect things and, have like processes and formulas that make sense. And, it excels in air signs, like that quickness. And when you submerge Mercury in a water sign, it has to communicate in watery ways. Mercury is not at home in Pisces. It's far away from home because Virgo is its exaltation ruler and its domicile ruler. So it's just like when you are far away from home, you don't have all the tools readily available. So it just takes you a little bit of extra time. So that's just Mercury in Pisces anyway. When it goes retrograde, it's like you were on vacation and you lost all your luggage and your ID and your money, but you're in a really beautiful place. So do you really need those things? That's kind of Bad Bunny just played the Super Bowl. He
You mean
performed
Bonito Bowl, right? Bonito Bowl.
the Benina Bowl, yeah. And so he sang in Spanish. And if you don't speak Spanish, then you didn't understand what he said. But even if you didn't understand what he said, you could still enjoy the music. Similar if you went to an Italian opera. You can still be moved by the communication, even if you don't have the direct data of the language or of the lyrics. And that is kind of the theme of Mercury retrograde in Pisces. It's like you may not have all the information, but it's still causing or asking you to slow down. And it may stir up some of those emotions because it's in a water sign. It's going to be near Venus and the North Node and the Sun, so it's just a very watery world that Mercury is having to retract and retrace some steps and redo some things. I don't find I get as much like electronic mayhem when it's in a water sign. It's usually like emotional stirring up of things because it's in that watery realm. But it will go direct on March 20th, just before the spring equinox, like a few hours before. So we just have these 3 weeks to reflect before we kind of spring forward into Aries season.
Mhm.
Who do you think is going to have the best time during a Mercury retrograde?
Well, geez. Well, I mean, it's just kind of planet soup right now. In Pisces, it's just alphabet soup, I guess. Oh gosh, I think it's gonna be really fun for Cancer. Cancer
Mhm.
rising, Cancer
That's what I was
sun,
thinking. Yeah.
Cancer luminary. Yeah, because Jupiter's there and is sitting back at 15 and still RX. So, with Jupiter retrograde, you get to do it again, right? But
Mhm.
you get it in that nice, cozy, watery pit of Cancer, and, Jupiter's exalted there. So
Yeah.
you're getting that pedestal. You're getting Jupiter on the pedestal. And that's the ruler for Pisces. So I think
Yeah.
just, overseeing this planetary soup in Pisces it's going to be hopefully not a mosh pit, but a little more like a lazy
Like
Sunday
a
afternoon.
mush pit. Yeah.
How about a mush pit? Yeah.
Yeah,
Be-
I think all the water risings will experience this in a more kind of fun, lighter way, just in general. If you have a Scorpio, Pisces, or Cancer rising, I think that the
yeah.
Mercury retrograde will just be a little bit more fun and poetic and creative, maybe emotional, sentimental, but overall not as
Yeah.
destructive as other Mercury retrogrades have proven to be. And Mercury's going to be
Yeah.
retrograde in all water signs this year. So we'll get
Mhm.
used to this sort of emotional memory lane
Yeah. I
sort
don't
of a
know.
thing.
Mercury in Pisces makes me think of deja vu too. And so now that we get
Mm,
it all in the water signs, it's going to be like, did we see this again? Are we seeing it once more? Yeah.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
as your astrologer, I tell you just to write it down. Write down the date, when it happened, what happened, even if it doesn't make any sense. Write it
Yes.
down in a place that you can find so that you can bring it to your astrologer and they can help you understand it.
Put it on your calendar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So from that, you know, kind of poetically scientific world, we are going to this one, which is Mars square Uranus. I put the little square 90-degree crash from Mars up there in Aquarius down to Uranus in Taurus. This is something that happens a couple times a year, but in fixed signs, it can be a little bit of a louder, disruptive story than when it happens in other modalities. Uranus is direct at 27 degrees, and it will be going into Gemini later on this spring. But we get one final, just for fun, Mars square Uranus. I put this image here because it reminded me of the Tower card in Tarot. If you know the Tower card, it looks a lot like this. There's something that is kind of overgrown. It's too high. It's too big for its own foundation. So divine force, lightning bolt comes out and strikes the tower, and it disperses all that built up energy to then create more. But it does dismantle and destroy and let things fall away, which can be really disruptive, especially for fixed signs, which the job of the fixed signs is to like sustain, and it's like Hodor in Game of Thrones. It's got one job. And when you destroy that job, it can be really disruptive. But it happens, and it's part of the process of, creation. We need destruction to create more. So it's not really the friendliest transit. We have experienced this in mundane terms of people in public view being attacked. It can also just be like earthquakes and things kind of erupting, so volcanoes. And Aquarius, though, Aquarius is an air sign, and Uranus is in Taurus, which is an earth sign. So it's like the action of ideas really breaking up systems of comfort. Getting out of comfort zones, especially for the fixed signs, I think is going to come to a head towards the 27th of February when they are exact. And then Mars will leave and go into Pisces. We're not going to talk about Mars and Pisces, but that is the next transit that happens after this. Again, it's submerging into that watery realm of Pisces. But this is kind of a big one to pay attention to. Kind of watch your temper on this day. Give in to overreaction, but I'll try to stay in that middle, peaceful mindfulness way. Choose peace for sure on the 27th. That's my long and winded thoughts on Mars square Uranus. What do you think?
Well, with Mars, we get action. Sometimes we get fight. We get initiation. Right? It's
Mhm.
it's exertive in that quote unquote masculine way. And with Aquarius, we get those ideals and liberation and concepts of the future. And so when we put those together, it's almost like we get this energy. Well, the phrase that came to mind was "we must evolve." So I think that propelling forward and what those possibilities could be. Because Aquarius is really usually concerns itself with communities and activism and systems, whether it's repairing, initiating, or breaking them down. I think
Mhm.
that's got some potential to it. But Uranus,
Uranus.
Uranus has been where it's at for a while now. So,
Yeah.
it's not anything that's new, but it's definitely things that have been building. And I
Mm.
think it's pretty palpable.
Mhm.
Uranus is a great keyword. And I think you mentioned it before is disruption.
Yeah.
for better or worse. So with a square, it's causing tension and it's almost forcing movement in this way, right? You have
Mm,
to turn a corner. So that can feel destabilizing. You come around a corner and it's like huge gust of wind. You know what I mean? And if you're not
mhm,
prepared for it, knocks things out of your hands and it's very destabilizing. So, when we're talking about Taurus, you mentioned, your resources and things too. Your life sustaining resources, food, water, shelter, those things that you count on and expect to be there when you're used to having them there may feel destabilized.
mm,
You just went through a winter storm that you're not used to, and
mhm.
that changed your everyday life for a little, for a short while. So
Yeah.
that felt very rocky and destabilized. Just like real life example that's tangible. But I would probably just say try not to make too many impulsive decisions
Mm, mhm.
during this week, because there's a lot of movement with Mercury rethinking things and Mars wanting to take action.
Yeah, for any fixed rising, so that's Aquarius and Taurus, but also Leo and Scorpio. This transit, this square, the nature of Mars is to overcome, and the square is the aspect. So this is a very Marsy transit, and that's what propels us to grow and go forward. And so to do this in as graceful a way as possible, so there's less collateral damage for the fixed risings for Scorpio, Taurus, Aquarius, Leo, this will most likely be the loudest for fixed risings. And so looking at, mostly where the Taurus house is for you, because Mars is going to be applying this square to the Uranus there in the Taurus house. And just, choosing peace, but also allowing that liberation to come from the action, and maybe don't hold on so tightly. For the mutable risings, though, I was thinking this might be harder because it's happening in those cadent houses. It might feel just real adjacent. I mean, especially for this Gemini rising chart we're looking at, Uranus is in the 12th. And so having Mars up there in the ninth, kind of
Mhm.
that higher belief challenging some maybe deep seated negative thoughts that you don't even realize that you're having. To me, that's incredible to have that breakthrough, but that can be kind of messy. That can be really emotionally vulnerable to have that sort of thing dislodged, from your deep psyche. So the cardinals, I feel like you might be able to maximize this transit the most. That's
Yeah.
Cancer, Capricorn, Libra, and Aries. It's
Mhm.
going to be succeedent. So it's like this liberation might be that moment of breakthrough to then really support all of your big life areas. So, but it's really the mutable risings that I'm like, that it's going to be loud for fixed signs, but it might be the most
Uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
For
then
those.
fundamentally meaningful for the mutables.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. That's actually a really great point because those cadent houses, it's like it could create a lonely feeling as well as
Mm,
not saying you're helpless, but that lack of knowing which direction to go
yeah.
and that leaving you feeling helpless or, unsure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to have a
Okay.
couple of days after that to kind of like settle in. Like after the dust settles from that tower, we are then going to experience this lunar eclipse. We will have experienced the new moon in Aquarius, which is the first Aquarius eclipse in 9 years on the 17th of February. And then you hear people talk about the eclipse window, and that's like the window opens with one eclipse and closes with another. This is the other eclipse. So after this eclipse on the 3rd, the eclipse window will be shut and we won't have that eclipse window open again till August. We've had a series of this Virgo Pisces axis eclipse, but now that the nodes are moving closer to the beginning of the signs of Pisces, the nodes move against the zodiac. So they go from 29 degrees to 0 degrees. So the nodes are moving closer and closer to the early degrees of these signs, and then they're going to move into Leo and Aquarius. And it's the distance of the lunation, the full moon or the new moon, to that lunar node. These are these little sigils that look like a horseshoe. They're close enough to then start to be technically an eclipse when they're within 15 degrees. So that's why we had an eclipse in Aquarius in February and not in Pisces, even though the node is still in Pisces. So this one here, we've had a pair of eclipses in 2025. And this is going to continue on really until 2027. have another one of these next year. So we're really digging into this Virgo area with this eclipse energy. This is another image from this Jules Verne book that I thought was just very Virgoan and very eclipsy. I really, really, really love this one here. So with all that, what are your thoughts on this particular eclipse? I know we've done a couple of workshops. We have
Yeah.
definitely ground the powder of the eclipse, but specifically for this one, what are you thinking?
I mean, eclipses, for those unfamiliar, culminations, revelations, what are we uncovering? What are we
Mm,
releasing? All those fun keywords. But I think we can also think of what we can keep practical and what
mm,
we can specify. And this particular image makes me think of what we can embody. It feels, because it's still tying in with the Pisces axis, it can still feel very mystical. Virgo gets a bad rap, I think, for being spreadsheets and data, and that's not
mhm.
wrong, but that's also not bad. It's
There's
still
also
very,
lots of sweeping with Virgo. Like, to me, that is
yes,
like the broom
cleansing.
and cleansing and sweeping and stirring up. That is like attending to that is also kind of spiritual work, but in just that earthy, mundane level.
Yeah, there's a purification that's available to it.
Mhm,
There's the perfectionism and the discernment can work for you in very mystical, and spiritual ways just as
yeah.
well as it can on, in Excel or, Google
Mhm.
Sheets.
I mean,
Work for you.
Virgo is double bodied, right?
Yeah.
All of the mutable signs are double bodied. We forget that. So we think of the one body of Virgo as being, the data geek, but the other body is that like pure witch
Yeah.
that is that Virgo double bodiedness. Early depictions of Virgo as a woman with bird wings. It's like she was human, but she also was able to be a mythical creature as well. What stands out though for this chart is the ruler of Virgo is Mercury, which is retrograde, and the ruler of Pisces is Jupiter, which is retrograde. So this is
Mhm.
so much of this, I feel like, is a reflection of the last eclipses that happened. And so looking at those dates and to kind of uncover what's the next layer of exfoliation and
Yeah.
purification that is happening in these areas of life, looking at the Virgo Pisces axis, especially now that Saturn is out of Pisces. There's like your stern older brother is not in the room, like watching you clean up. Like now you get to just kind of do it on your own terms a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that there's probably that potential too for burnout becoming much more obvious or
Mm,
someone being more willing to accept it.
hmm
Right now, chronic stress is like wildly available, and so I think now that Saturn has moved into Aries, we get the malefics, so to speak, working together in a sense, but I feel like Saturn's going to hunker down and focus that energy a little bit more where we can redirect ourselves, like purge a schedule. Purge those apps you're not using. What
hmm
kind of commitments can you alleviate? Maybe you start leaning into editing your creative projects instead or, changing workflows.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm also looking at Venus here, almost at the exaltation degree. Like she exalts at 27 degrees of Pisces, and she is moving into that. And she is moving into a really cool sextile with Uranus, who
Yeah.
has just been disrupted by Mars. So, like, Uranus is kind of fully plugged in
Mhm.
and shackled, it's almost like if you've ever put a mud mask on, point where it like gets really tingly and tight and you're like, grr, I just want to take it off. And then it starts to flake off and then you're able to wash it off. And then after that, you feel astringent and soft
Mhm.
and you have all the minerals from the mud, but it's like that uncomfortable bit is the Mars square Uranus and then that softness is Venus and Uranus connecting in that sextile.
Mhm.
So she is the exaltation ruler of Pisces and she's there with Mercury, which is the ruler of the moon where the full moon is going to be. So I really like this one. I just think
Yeah.
it's soft and it's reminiscent. It's very sentimental, nostalgic, and it being kind of the end window of this eclipse. I think that I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think maybe it's just a time to slow down and be soft. That's kind of what I'm getting from this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. It's like a chance to revisit whatever makes you feel magical. in a
Mhm.
sense, everyone throws around the term self-care. With the mud mask, that's what it made me think of.
Mm.
There's no reason that doing that, putting earth on your face is very Mercury, right? Very,
Yeah.
very Mercury Venus in that sense, where and then you actually, if you're putting your face in the basin, right? If you're washing and cleansing that mud away, I mean, it's just that in itself can become a ritual that you could practice,
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
intention. Yeah, I think that's a whole nother way to look at things. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe, just thinking of it, I was like, there's so many ways that you can do self-care of the body using the zodiac man. Old depictions of astrology was like the Aries was the head and the Taurus was the neck and Gemini was the shoulders and the arms and Cancer was the bosom and you go all the way through and you have, all the signs representing different parts of the body. And so there's different self-care you could give yourself in a month's time,
Yeah.
as the moon goes through there. And a Virgo moon is a time to kind of organize how that's going to work.
Yeah.
So
Practice. Yeah.
yeah. And then you'll like by the end of it, you will have self-cared every like it's such a Virgoan thing to like detail every
It
single
is.
body.
Yep. Oh, I
So
love
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Maybe I'll write that for the Asteri Sofia Kairos Substack. Just like
I
my
love it.
suggestions for a month starting, like plan it out on the Virgo eclipse and then spend the next
Oh,
30 days just giving yourself some self-care because self-care is easier said than done. I mean, sometimes it's
oh,
just drinking water like I am. A lot of times for me, it's like unsubscribing from things to just not have things demand my attention, just emptying the goddamn trash,
yeah.
sweeping. Upgrading to like a bigger Ipsy bag, whatever you need, it's
Yeah.
like the little
Yeah.
things to help make things soft. Because things feel pretty glitchy and edgy and dry and
So
desiccated
prickly
and
right now.
prickly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So prickly. Ready for the seed to burst through the soil.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, and then this is the last eclipse for a couple of months, the last transit for this week. So next week, March 4th through 10th, I hope those dates are right. There will be a couple
Close
of
enough.
us. We don't know. We don't know who it's going to be yet, but I put this image here. This is a night parade of 100 ghosts, and it's all about these ghost stories that were told, and then the ghosts came out of the ghost stories once the lantern was put out. So at darkness, and I just love this after an eclipse, like the night parade of the ghost comes out. But there's a lot coming up for next week. We have the Sun trine Jupiter, Venus into Aries, Mercury Cazimi, Venus conjoins Saturn, Mercury trine Jupiter, and then Jupiter goes direct. So we only had 3 transits to talk about this week. We have a parade of ghosts for next week, which is kind of what this was. And so it will be me and or Sonia and or Shawna and or Mandy. We haven't figured that out yet, but there's a lot of transits. So it might be all of us talking about this. But yeah, thanks, Shawna, for joining me for this week.
Yeah. So much fun. Things are coming. Things are moving. Yeah.
Yeah, as my friend used to say, Nader's coming.
Oh,
Like a tornado. It's
it's a
coming.
nice watch out for Nader. Oh, did you sidetrack, right? Because that's my brain. Did you see the snow NATO?
No, there was a
No,
snow
you're gonna have
NATO.
to look that up now.
Okay.
Everyone watching, you're gonna have to look that up.
All
There was a
right.
snow NATO. Yeah.
Just mark that off my bingo card. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Done. Boom.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. And we hope you have a good week.